Episode 5.
Episode 5. Don't buy this.
Don't buy this episode.
No.
Super exciting. We're back. And Joe, we're starting with a fun quiz.
Oh, exciting.
And I know, I'm going to quiz you. I'm going to read 3 Buycotts. I'm reading 3 Buycotts. And it's up to you to decide which is real or which is fake. I'm going to read quotes from them, and then you guess which is real or fake. And then I'll tell you a little bit more about them. How's that?
Sounds good. I'm ready.
Let's do it. Okay. Number 1. In 2012, after a Seattle tax ruling favored Starbucks, residents organized Operation Latte and bought 25,000 lattes at independent cafes in a single day, forcing the city to reopen the case. 1.
Okay.
Operation Latte. 2. In 2007, fans of a canceled CBS drama pooled $26,000 and shipped roughly 20 tons of peanuts, about 8 million of them, to network offices. CBS surrendered and uncanceled the show. That's 2. 3. In 1820, abolitionists opened dedicated stores across Britain and America, stocking only goods made by free labor, slave-free sugar and cotton. Consumers could vote against slavery at the counter. It was largely run by women. Which do you believe is fake?
Operation Latte.
Operation Latte. Okay.
I think.
You are correct. You got it.
Did I? Okay, both of the other ones were real. I knew the peanut one was real, but I didn't know about the I guess the third was like, it was too good.
I didn't know the peanut one. Okay, so a little reveal. So the final option I shared is in 1820, abolitionists opened dedicated stores across Britain, Canada, and America, stocking only goods made by free labor, slave-free sugar and cotton, so consumers could vote against slavery at the counter. It was largely run by women, and it was. This was called the Free Product Movement. It was the OG Buycott, and it is a direct ancestor of today's fair trade movement.
I love it.
Yeah. So now I didn't know anything about Operation Peanut or Mail-In or whatever I called it. In 2007, fans of a canceled CBS drama called Jericho, 5,000 fans pooled $26,000 in 22 days. They mailed in approximately 8 million peanuts to the show with one word, nuts. And so that was a successful boycott of peanuts. And the fake one, yes, Operation Latte.
Operation Latte was not real.
It was not real. There's kind of interesting things in it that it actually kind of hedges into an area that we're going to talk a little bit about. Sometimes boycotts work against our better angels. And so there have been a couple boycotts, that did the opposite of what you and I would like them to do. In 2012, there was the Chick-fil-A Appreciation Day boycott. This was August 1st. And it was organized by former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. It was a counter-protest to support the chain's executives after Dan Cathy affirmed his position to same-sex marriage, which did not support same-sex marriage. Yeah. That did create their largest single day in sales on August 1st, 2012. And it was followed 2 days later by National Same-Sex Kiss Day, in which pro-LGBTQIA plus groups, a lot of people were kissing and generally spreading love.
Awesome. And they can go both ways, as you say.
The boycott. Following our last episode about boycotts, we're coming into our day of boycotts. In our previous episode, we talked about boycott those in Montgomery, the Montgomery bus boycott. We talked about Anthropic, OpenAI versus Anthropic, Oatly. In those cases, folks withheld their capital from brands they didn't support. And today we're going to talk about when folks deploy energy or capital to support companies they do, or companies or movements or ideas that they do support. So
important distinction between like keeping the money, not spending the money with a company or a movement or organization versus like using the money and capital to actually vote with your dollars or share your values that way.
And something we didn't add in the previous episode, which I find really fascinating, is where the term boycott came from. And this was actually a person. The original boycott was of a human called Captain Charles Boycott. And he was a hated 1880s Irish land agent. And basically, he was frozen out until he left the community. He was collecting rent from Irish folks on their land. And so his name became a verb.
And he must have been like
the worst.
A very special, evil human for everybody to like freeze him out and kick him out of community, and for him to actually have this like this word, this name that now like represents resistance,
I love it.
Essentially. Yeah.
I love it so much.
Against evil.
Yeah, against the evildoers. Okay, so rolling off our last episode, I think it's important for us to share a few traits of a buycott, because we're going to see these throughout the episode and the examples we share. Buycotts have really clear targets. They have a clear outcome. They are trying to achieve a specific outcome. Timing is involved. They have a tight window or a time of action, and that time of action can last until they achieve their goal. There's signals. These buycotts create signals that folks in the greater community cannot ignore. They are very visible. The cost to engage in the buycott needs to be low. We're not like boycotting Ferraris. That doesn't make sense. It has to be inclusive so that we can build very big tents and big communities around these. Buycotts really need people to wrap their identity around them. They need to identify with the values and the goal and take it and make it their own. And then there's a pressure point. So within the buycott, there is a lever that protesters or buyers are pulling to get to that target. Yeah.
And that like it has that leverage point has a real significant, often like financial outcome to whoever is getting the sort of the short stick of the buycott, right?
Yeah. Like the lever is often withholding capital or withholding time from something and pushing it into another area, like the slave-free grocery stores, free labor groceries. So that's the idea. We're deploying energy and capital somewhere where either we haven't ever before or it's an alternative to something.
Yeah.
I already shared these go both ways. So we can have really positive buycotts that are driving. This is all framing and what our values are and where we're coming from, which is like we want to see progressive social change and economic impact. So, but folks want to buy Chick-fil-A, right? It goes both ways. And it's quite rare that kind of like what we see, the social media buycotts and boycotts, they don't really move the needle necessarily. Buycotts certainly not, but boycotts create a like more of a bump, but they tend to fade. And so we're seeing in real life online as having different kind of outcomes. And a lot of buycotts are driven by new buyers, first-time buyers, or people maybe who have never engaged with a cause or a brand, maybe because they didn't know they could, or they didn't see that clear entry point for them, that clear access point for them. So we're going to share 3 case studies today, and they're the exception to that rule. These are where social media became a real part of how these buycotts took hold, and they created really positive outcomes overall. If we think about the Montgomery bus boycott in our last episode, that was this withholding with a clear target, a tight window that became 381 days. One day turned into 381 days. It was a signal people couldn't ignore. It was a low cost to join, low financial cost, high personal cost for those folks, like redesigning their lives during that time. It was attached to their identity because it was about their identity. And the pressure point was that these white-owned bus lines were used by upwards of 75% ridership of Black folks and people of color.
I think the idea to remember is that social media can be a tool to share information about a political or corporate view, and that could really build community. But in and itself, social media can be a hard sort of platform just to do the boycott or the buycott. It's a means to communicate with potentially the community that you're trying to reach, which I think you will talk about, especially in the first two examples. This was really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is what I think we also saw in this whole, what we talked about in our last episode, which was like OpenAI versus Anthropic, and the entire movement to move away from utilizing ChatGPT and going over to Anthropic and Claude.
Yeah, that alternative was made clear. Yes. Folks acted.
Quick.
So let's get into it.
Christy's going to take us to the first example, which is all about...
Yeah, it's gaming.
Gaming. GameStop.
GameStop. The GameStop short. This is very exciting. Okay, so let's go. So really, the GameStop saga was this kind of David versus Goliath story. But it was focused on the stock market. It was no ad campaign by a company. This was not sponsored by any company, unlike the examples we're going to share a little bit later. This was crowd organizing itself, the crowd organizing itself. So this is the, seeming equivalent, like a polarity to the Montgomery boycott that we talked about last episode. And I think some folks might know, because maybe there are folks listening that bought shares. Maybe a lot of folks have seen the film from 2023, Dumb Money, starring Paul Dano as Gill, Keith Gill, Seth Rogen as the hedge fund guy. If you want to learn more, get after it. Paul Dano is legendary as Gill. Okay, so our hero of this story our unassuming hero is Keith Gill. So he grew up in Brockton, Massachusetts, from a working class family. He was the first person in his family to graduate from college. He was a track athlete, and he became a chartered financial advisor and a licensed broker. It took him a really long time to find a job coming out of the 2008 financial crisis. He and his family were deeply impacted by the financial crisis, which really matters for the motivation behind this boycott. So after looking for a long time, he found a day job at Mass Mutual, and he created educational tools to help people understand how to invest. And by night, he had a YouTube
channel.
Yeah, a channel, but he was like, during the day, he was Keith Gill, but when he put his bandana on, with his kitty in the background, with his kitty posters and his kitty shirts, he became Roaring Kitty. And he was a very serious stock analyst for regular people, and this was all done for free. This was for entertainment purposes only, as I think we're supposed to say sometimes on social media. In June 2019, he started buying GameStop at around $5 a share. He posted his $53,000 position in GameShare, in GameStop, and he was ridiculed online for about a year. And at the peak of the GameStop saga, that $53,000 position was around $48 million. That's the value that it went to. So the first thing we need to know about the GameStop saga is some of the details of, like, what are the mechanics of this? What are the mechanics of this boycott? So Keith Gill believed GameStop was undervalued, and folks were short selling it. They borrow the share, they sell it at $5, they wait for the price to drop, and they buy it back cheaper, and they keep the difference. So if the price rises, they have to pay that money back. And really, in the GameStop saga, the price, that loss had no ceiling, or we'll get to the numbers. And now there's the short squeeze. So that was the short sell by hedge funds and traders. And the short squeeze is where Gil and the crowd that developed around the Buycott, this is where they come in. So the crowd started buying and the price went up, and the short sellers started bleeding, and they were forced to buy it back, the stock back at higher prices, and the price just kept going up more and more. So it became a feedback loop where the crowd had created this momentum, and the short sellers' panic actually acted as fuel in the short squeeze. So this really was like a powder keg on Wall Street, and 140% of the public float sold short. And so there were more IOUs than actual shares available. This really interesting place where these traders were quietly trying to devalue the company shares, and folks got a hold of it based on Keith Gill's advice and Roaring Kitty's advice, and then folks just started this movement. And so those are the mechanics, but let's get into how it actually took place. Wall Street Bets is a Reddit kind of thread community, and they find Roaring Kitty. They find Keith Gill's content around the same time that Ryan Cohen, the founder and owner of Chewy's, the massive pet food company or pet world company, he announced that he had taken a 10% stake in GameStop and believed there was a future for the company. And that is when the stock was still under $20. So it was a huge opportunity for Ryan to come out and say, I have this huge share in this company. So what this amounts to is Wall Street in January 2021, Wall Street Bets had, at the beginning of the month, they had 2 million members in that Reddit community. They went up to 6.5 million members in 1 week. January 25th, there were 175 million plus shares of GameStop traded. And that is like 6 times the normal amount that would be traded. And by January 27th, 2021, GameStop had experienced its biggest single trading day for that stock, but also it was the single largest trading day in the US market history. And these are all folks that were most of these folks were first time. This was the first stock they'd have ever bought. Now, so folks are they're buying the stock, they're getting rich, or they're creating a lot of speculative value. Because one of the things about this was they were holding. People wanted to hold those shares. They did not want to sell. They wanted to drive Melvin Capital and the other hedge funds basically into bankruptcy. And so there was a lot of carnage on Wall Street as a result of this. And so Melvin Capital, who had a very large short position, they lost 53% of their net worth in January. That equates to $6.8 billion gone that they had lost. And they had to receive a $2.75 billion emergency bailout. And they ultimately went out of business or were dissolved in 2022. We've talked about the mechanics and a little bit about how this actually happened and some of the conditions that created this momentum behind the GameStop saga. But Joe, one of the really big pieces that I think when I really started researching this, I felt this was such an important piece. I found this viral letter, this open letter to Melvin Capital, yes, CNBC, Boomers, and Wall Street Bets. And this was in the Wall Street Bets Reddit thread, and it was posted January 28th, 2021. And this is really the proof that this was a boycott and it was not a get-rich-quick scheme. This was not a bunch of people buying the stock just to put money in their pocket. This was way bigger than that. Because think about it. So many folks were absolutely decimated by 2008. And as Canadians, we were quite insulated from that experience of 2008. Absolutely. I think we lost people in Canada lost around 8% of average 8% of portfolio or their net worth during that during the meltdown in 2008. Do your own research. I believe the number in my head is that Americans on average lost 30% of their net worth in just a few short weeks. And it took a very long time for folks to recover. So this open letter to Melvin Capital, I want to read a few pieces of this to you. And this is an anonymous user. I was in my early teens during the '08 financial crisis. I vividly remember the enormous repercussions that the reckless actions by those on Wall Street had in my personal life. Do you know what tomato soup made out of school cafeteria ketchup packets tastes like? My friends and I got to find out. So this is the framing. This decimated American families. Absolutely. So many folks have like grown up with these memories of 2008 and the aftermath. The same writer to Melvin Capital. I dumped my savings into GameStop, paid my rent for this month with my credit card, and dumped my rent money into more GameStop, and I'm holding. This is personal for me and millions of others. Sorry, why am I getting weirdly emotional about this?
Start crying.
Right? No, it's like so big, right? Like it's like
it is so big for people.
The momentum and the energy of it and people feeling agency. And so I will continue and I will hold us together.
Continue, please.
You can drop the price of GameStop after hours to 120. I'm not going anywhere. You could pay for thousands of Reddit bots I'm holding. You can get every mainstream media outlet to demonize us. I don't care. I'm making this as painful for you as I can. So that is the sentiment of so many folks that bought GameStop. This was not like, ooh, I'm going to make a couple bucks. This was like, we are out for blood. The system is broken. We're fixing it.
It was, I think, for so many people, and that's why so many people related to Keith Gill and all the others that were posting on these Reddit threads and coming together, a community, because it was so personal, that experience that, and not just in, obviously, the 2008 crisis, like really amplified everybody's pain and suffering and financial situations, but this is it's not just the case for 2008. This is an ongoing issue with the systems that we're talking about. And just as you explained, the whole idea of short selling and how hedge funds and institutions are actually manufacturing financial scenarios where they are betting on people losing. These communities, these individuals were like, we're going to bet on us winning, not for the purpose of like, we're going to get rich, but we're going to win because we have a real mission here that we are trying to achieve, right? We're going to create pain for you so you know how it feels to get screwed.
Yeah.
Right? Like
this also, it's like I think a very close relative of the GameStop saga is Occupy Wall Street. Like there's deep connections between those two actions and many more. So let's get to the next piece, because what happened on January 28th, the day that Reddit thread, that letter was posted to Reddit, a bunch of shit went down. So Robinhood, who was the platform that most of these GameStop sellers were using, these first-time buyers, it killed the buy button on GameStop. You could only sell it. And the price started to collapse. No one knew what was happening, so they didn't know. And so folks started to sell. They just had no idea what was happening. And the app was named for called out for pulling the ladder up behind them. That they had created this huge user base for themselves, and they were making money, and they just kind of pulled it up and left the crowd to fend for themselves. And that's kind of how people played it. The really straightforward, less dramatic version of that is that the clearinghouse collateral during the spikes of these sales, Robinhood didn't have the billions on hand to backstop all of that. And so there's no conspiracy theory. Really, Robinhood was also going to bleed as a result of all of these trades. They stopped buying and they only allowed selling, it was seen as when regular people win, the game stops. As a result of that, there was a congressional hearing called. And I'm going to share a few moments from that congressional hearing that I think are absolutely amazing. And this is the first time in this episode we're going to hear from Gil. And so let's hear what Keith Gill has to say during that congressional hearing. Here we go. Keith Gill at his opening statement before Capitol Hill lawmakers.
Member McHenry, members of the committee. I'm happy to discuss with the committee my purchases of GameStop shares and my discussions of their fair value on social media. It is true that my investment in that company multiplied in value many times. For that, I feel enormously fortunate. I also believe the current price of the shares demonstrates that I've been right about the company. A few things I am not. I am not a cat. I am not an institutional investor, nor am I a hedge fund. I do not have clients, and I do not provide personalized investment advice for fees or commissions. I'm just an individual whose investment in GameStop and posts on social media were based upon my own research and analysis.
That's the kind of energy that Gil brought into this congressional hearing. Really measured, really calm, very clear on his part in all of this, the situation. I will share just a little bit more of that congressional testimony because it's amazing. So let's go. Here we go. A little more Gil.
Information gave me confidence that GameStop was undervalued. First, the market was underestimating the prospects of GameStop's legacy business and overestimating the likelihood of bankruptcy. I grew up playing video games and shopping at GameStop, and I plan to continue shopping there. GameStop stores still provide real value to consumers and reliable revenue for GameStop. Second, I believe that GameStop has the potential to reinvent itself as the ultimate destination for gamers within the rapidly growing $200 billion gaming industry. GameStop has a unique opportunity to pivot toward a technology-driven business. By embracing the digital economy, GameStop may be able to find new revenue streams that vastly exceed the value of its business. I am hardly the only person who has advocated these points. When I wrote and spoke about GameStop on social media with other individual investors, our conversations were no different from people in a bar or on a golf course or at home talking or arguing about a stock. Hedge funds and other Wall Street firms have teams of analysts working together to compile research and analyze shares of companies. Individual investors do not have those resources. Social media platforms like Reddit, YouTube, and Twitter are leveling the playing field. The idea that I use social media to promote GameStop stock to unwitting investors and influence the market is preposterous. My post did not cause the movement of billions of dollars into GameStop shares. It is tragic that some people lost money, and my heart goes out to them. But what happened in January just demonstrates again that investing in public securities is extremely risky.
That's just Keith Gill. That's the Keith Gill vibe. And true to himself, he has his bandana hanging behind him with his cute little kitty hang in there poster.
Yeah.
Which we can post on our socials.
Yeah.
We'll actually post that whole clip.
Yeah. We'll post the whole clip. I think what's interesting too, and is that, as you alluded to earlier, is that Capitol Hill and others in the financial industry really try to, at first, put the blame on him, on even platforms like Reddit, Robinhood, and like that they were to blame for the failure in the system, when in fact it was just the system. It was like nobody was actually doing anything bad. They were just playing the game, right? They were playing the game, right? The system like has manufactured. Well, that's what I mean. It's like the system. Yeah, it's a manufactured system. They made the rules, right?
Yeah. And the biggest flaw was that they completely underestimated and counted out the crowd and the many, the folks that the dumb money, as they called it. And so,
and to that point of like the definition or the characteristics of a buycott for it to work is the miscalculated people's ability to identify with this individual and with this action, and really underestimated the pain people felt and their deep-seated need to have some kind of retaliation too. And where people had taken us to the quote that you read, right? And it was just one example of the millions of people that participated in this.
And how completely out of touch with Main Street these hedge funds were. How completely out of touch. Like, this is, and that's, don't get me started. It's the worst. Oh my God.
Yeah, it is.
So, okay, there's, there have been some updates. Gil went dark for 3 years. And in May 2024, he shared a wordless meme, and the stock tripled in value as a result of that meme. And his position in the stock that he shared, he had held all of his shares, was worth $289 million.
It's crazy.
It caused a GameStop selling frenzy, and it raised over $3 billion. And so the GameStop saga continues, but I just want to share one final thing. We know he likes the stock, but I just want to share one other kind of clip and just share maybe 10, 20 seconds of this just to show the vibe that he came back with. So in May 2024, he went online for the first time in 3 years. Roaring Kitty was back. And so let's just pick up the vibe that Roaring Kitty came in with.
Always a cat.
Always a cat.
Or multiple cats.
Oh, many cats. All the cats. I'm a little bit obsessed with cats, so it's fine. I love it. So this is June 7th, 2024. Keith Gill's vibe. He's alive. A lot of cats. All the cats.
All the cats.
Right? So good.
Cats.
Just cats and like stock market tickers and more cats.
And the chat is just popping out.
Oh, the chat is crazy. People are so excited. We are back. Yeah. Banger. Meow.
Yeah.
It's in the culture. So cute. Bong. I can't believe this. Hero. Love
Netflix.
Netflix.
Let's go.
Oh, yeah. There's the cat and the snowball. I will stop.
We won't make you listen to the 50 minutes of that.
But I love that so much. Like the vibe and the chat just popping off, and people look at the energy that he created. He just showed up. And this is a regular dude. Like, I just love it so much. It's not like in our next case study, it's not some superstar. So this is a regular folk. And as we close this out, if we call back to our previous episode, Montgomery, 75% of ridership withheld their dollars. They had a clear demand. They lasted 381 days and they won. And Reddit, this huge share of daily value, was deployed dollars at a pressure point during 1 week in January 2001. They drew blood. The technology changed, but the muscle didn't. It was the same focus and the same desire to change the system.
Absolutely. And then we, of course, in our last episode, talked about the entire OpenAI versus Anthropic most recent saga around like the boycott for the use of ChatGPT and people running towards the use of Claude. And we've continued to see that play out in real life, as that has had major implications for OpenAI and subsequently a big increase of usage and dollars for Anthropic. It's really interesting, though, that the GameStop example is, as you said, a great example of just regular people and really leading the way in some of this buycott activity. And when we look at our next example, it is, I think, the Nike Dream Crazy ad, an example, but it's also an example of like a company really leading the path a little bit in some of this, bringing ideas and bringing a concept to life, and then the subsequent reaction is the buycott, right? Yeah. So I think it can happen and be sort of framed in different ways depending on who leads it sometimes.
Let's dive in. The Nike Dream Crazy campaign. And so this was a buycott and a boycott, all same day, same company, and the same trigger point, but really one side won decisively in this, their own Dream Crazy saga. And the core question here is the values decision or market segment calculation. Like, does that matter? Does it matter if Nike did this for profit? You know, they just wanted to generate profit, which they did, or was it really focusing on what was behind the culture that had developed around, and the movement that had developed around Colin Kaepernick? And really, ultimately, does that matter? Like, does it matter if they were just profit driven? And so, going to give a really quick bring you into the story before Joe takes us through the numbers. Colin Kaepernick had this really interesting rise in his career. In 2011, he was the second round draft pick in the NFL. In 2012, they did a Super Bowl run. In 2013, he was in the Pro Bowl, and he had a $126 million contract extension. And this is a quote from Kaepernick in August 2016. And this is about the first moments where his protest began. I'm not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses Black people and people of color. There are bodies in the street and people getting paid leave and getting away with murder. So Colin Kaepernick became even more famous than football, become more than football, the Dream Crazy campaign, because he took a knee. And he took a knee in games in the NFL to protest gun violence and the murders of folks of color across the United States. At first, he was just sitting on the bench and not standing for the anthem. And after conversations with kind of a mentor, Nate Boyer, who was an ex-Green Beret, he encouraged him to take a knee very visibly rather than just sitting on the bench. And so when he first took a knee, he was obviously attacked by Trump, but like, what's new? But in 2016, that meant more than it does now. 2016, he became the most disliked player among white fans and the most favored player among Black fans. Note to self. And in 2016, he became a free agent. There were, 32 teams. He had 0 offers, and he never played again. He filed a collusion grievance against the NFL, but, that's a different story. But what happened was Nike had him under a contract, under a sponsorship, and they kept paying him even though they were using him for nothing. He was not visible in any of their campaigning. And so that's kind of the framing for the what was happening coming into the creation of the Dream Crazy campaign.
Absolutely. And I think also remembering that, yes, the Dream Crazy campaign came at the tail end of this 2 years that like Nike was paying him under his contract, but that this was also the institution of American football. And it's such a big part of American culture. And this is one of their like star prized players, and he's not playing the game again as intended in the system. And he's taking his own stance, and he's standing up for the people. And he gets reprimanded for it very severely, right? He, as you said, he doesn't play football again. The league essentially forgets about him.
They shunned him.
They shunned him out of 2018 for 2 years. Kaepernick has been paid by Nike, but they haven't used him in any ads. They haven't used him anywhere. And so 2018 rolls around, and they actually are looking at what's happening in the market. They're looking at who is actually supporting or believing in the pro-Kaepernick perspective. And they're actually seeing quite large percentages of their customers that are siding with him, that are actually online having discourse around, yes, they're pro-Kaepernick, they're pro-kneeling. And it is actually the demographics of their ideal customers, right? They're like the 18 to 40-year-olds. They're young people that are actively not just buying in retail stores, but are buying online. They are in the direct-to-consumer space. They're buying online. And so Nike actually creates this 2-minute campaign, a 2-minute ad as part of their Nike Dream Crazy campaign. And we're going to watch it. And then we're going to talk about what this means. We're going to watch it in full and see how many tears flow down my face, because I'm very sappy when it comes to sports ads.
This and the Dove Real Beauty ad, man, that get me.
Yeah.
Every time. Just can't keep it together.
Okay, hold on.
Let's go.
Okay, here we go.
If people say your dreams are crazy, if they laugh at what you think you can do, good. Stay that way. Because what non-believers fail to understand is that calling a dream crazy is not an insult. It's a compliment. Don't try to be the fastest runner in your school or the fastest in the world. Be the fastest ever. Don't picture yourself wearing OBJ's jersey. Picture OBJ wearing yours. Don't settle for homecoming queen or linebacker. Do both. Lose 120 pounds and become an Iron Man after beating a brain tumor. Don't believe you have to be like anybody to be somebody. If you're born a refugee, don't let it stop you from playing soccer for the national team at age 16. Don't become the best basketball player on the planet. Be bigger than basketball. Something. Even if it means sacrificing everything. When they talk about the greatest team in the history of the sport, make sure it's your team. If you have only one hand, don't just watch football. Play it at the highest level. And if you're a girl from Compton, don't just become a tennis player. Become the greatest athlete ever. Yeah, that's more like it. So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough. And
so good.
So good. That's the best.
It's such a good ad, and what a smart, savvy way to use Kaepernick in a way that not only they're using him, but they're telling him part of his story too, and really the vibe and the mood of what he was trying to create too, which I thought was it's very, very special and very powerful. So
become bigger than basketball, which is what he did.
Become bigger than the sport.
He's bigger than
right?
football. He's bigger than
absolutely. And it's about the standing up for what you believe, which is part of the underlying message. Of course, it's a sports ad, but it transcends lots of different things in life. And I think that's part of the story, and that's why it was so powerful. And it didn't just, I don't think it just applied or touched people that were playing sports. It touched everybody, right? Because it was this more broader message that they were sharing. So they dropped this ad. It was very well timed on Labor Day weekend. It is the debut of this ad is during the NFL opener, right? A league that blacklisted it. It's not the debut during some other sport league. It is NFL football. And it's also like perfect timing for holiday shopping. They are still a company trying to make profits.
Yeah.
You can never forget that. But so there's this key piece in timing, right? So September 3rd, after this drops at 4:30 p.m., the tweets start happening. This is back when we still had Twitter. Boycott Nike, right? Within 90 minutes of this ad dropping. So suddenly there are seemingly MAGA folks and white nationalists that are burning their Nikes. They're like cutting out the swooshes out of their socks. And Trump, which is my favorite. I can't wait to see that.
Sorry.
Trump famously says, what was Nike thinking? But at the same time, while these this boycott is happening online and there's like Nike burning, at the same time, there's a huge surge of actually like supporters for this ad for Nike and Kaepernick. LeBron publicly backs this ad and the message, and many other athletes do as well online publicly. And there's suddenly this switch from a boycott that is still actively happening to actually a buycott, where those that really believe in this message and are touched by it are now like, okay, we're going to buy Nike on purpose. And there's this entire like surge. And we're seeing this interesting like arc of capital flowing out and then back into Nike. The stock itself has, because of the boycott, like the stock plummets. There's a $4 billion loss for Nike. But during this period, as others are coming in and saying, no, this is actually an amazing ad. We back this. The athletes are backing it. There's community and customers that are backing this publicly on social media. Over a 10-day period, after this very initial loss that Nike saw, then there was an overall sort of trend of like another $6 billion that are added to the stock value for Nike. So after the $4 billion, they have another $6 billion. So it's like a net positive. They see huge uptick in their value. But what's really interesting is, yes, there's a stock value impact that we see, but that's quite like clinical. What's more interesting is actually the value of media that Nike receives as a result of this, right? So this is by major news stories. This is all over social media. And so the number that floats around is like about $43 million of earned media that Nike receives without like paying $1 of that $43 million. This is what happens because everybody wants to pick up the story. It's finally this like star prized athlete that was dropped out of the league. He's back front and center, right?
Yeah.
And there are, and we talked about this last week as well. It's like, what's the memory of the brand, right? That's such a powerful part of the boycott, just as it is of the buycott. It's like, what is that memory, that action, whether it's an ad or it's some kind of event or trigger that actually leaves this lasting memory of that brand and that activation or that event in the memory of the customer or customers or society. And I think this is what like people remember. They barely remember the Nike shoe burning, but they remember this ad.
I think they remember the burning and like how funny it was. They're like,
exactly.
What a joke,
it wasn't
right?
like we're gonna join. It's like, yeah.
But also like when we call back to that, like I'm really glad you brought that forward, because if you think about the GameStop saga, memory, 3 years of silence, then the stock triples in value, and the comments like, we're back, we're gonna hold, we're in, whenever you say Roaring Kitty, we're gonna do it. Like the memory was like, it was rich. People were ready to act. And so I think that's so important.
Absolutely.
I love this quote by Jerry Davis, who I don't even know who Jerry Davis is, but he's the University of Michigan, and he said this to ABC, some coach or something. It turns out Democrats buy a lot more sneakers than Republicans. So thinking about the boycott piece.
Yeah, and that that Nike designed a campaign and really create an atmosphere where they, to some degree, probably knew that, like, this analysis is that their least valuable customers would reject the ad and the most valuable customers would embrace it. And so, of course, it was a bit of like, it was a gamble. They didn't know what would actually happen. But at the end of the day, that's what you do in business, right? A lot of like the decisions you make and the content you put out there is a bit of a gamble to see the reaction. That is it going to work? Are people going to come? Are people going to have the reaction that you really want them to have? And this was a really good bet. And they bet on the campaign, but they also bet on the individual, in that there was this piece of identity where people identified with with Kaepernick and his beliefs. And I think there was that they really bet on. And they got, in the long term, they got a lot of a great positive outcome, not only from earned media, but they actually got their first Emmy for this.
Yeah.
They got a bunch of Cannes Grand Prix prizes in advertising. And I actually don't think they would have gotten this if Kaepernick was not in the ad, right? It was some other person narrating. They would have not had this level of impact. And so I thought it's a very interesting case of what happens when a company really takes a bet on okay, we're going to back an idea, because they're backing somebody with a very strong perspective around what's happening in community.
Yeah.
I was going to read it.
Oh, sorry. You're going to read a quote. I want to say one thing about that. I think I totally agree. And I think something that's also really interesting is like in relation to GameStop and thinking about like Occupy Wall Street as being like an early cousin, an ancestor of the GameStop saga, and that like a really offensive on Wall Street and hedge funds. I think like this campaign is an ancestor of Black Lives Matter. Like what happened with Black Lives Matter in 2020, this was like a very, I think I would guess a lot of people had Kaepernick in their mind when and among other Black folks in their minds when they kind of hit the streets in 2020. So like there's these relationships and these threads. Yeah,
absolutely. And so I'm going to read a quote out by Phil Knight, Nike's co-founder. Yeah. It doesn't matter how many people hate your brand, as long as enough people love it. You have to take a stand on something. And that, I think, is just like quintessential. That is why they back this athlete and it really made a difference. And I think when you do stand behind an idea and a perspective, you will find the people that also share those values that show as well. And as we saw in GameStop, as we saw in the example of Nike and Kaepernick. And so really, and you didn't see my tears. I've seen that ad a lot of times. And it's always like, I think it really speaks to people that just have an idea and a perspective, and they want better and what could be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Go buy Nike? No, just joking. Pay attention. Yeah, absolutely.
Pay attention to who these brands are centering, who they're supporting, what kind of influencers they work with, and content creators, because that's a whole thing.
Absolutely.
Pay close attention to who they sit with as a way to identify like who you want to buy from too. Yeah.
Absolutely. It just makes me think of like the American Eagle Sydney Sweeney Better Jeans ad, which we won't get into now, but like another case in point of like a boycott. But take exactly to your point though, like pay attention to who brands are centering, because have they done their research? They share those values with whoever they're centering.
I feel like after that, maybe we need like a cute little palate cleanser. Do you think? I feel like we need a little palate cleanser before our third beat here.
Sounds good. Let's do a palate cleanser.
I feel like you have a surprise for me. I'm not aware of what these palate cleansers are. I did not look at them. So
you did not look at them?
I did not look because I just want to. I want to be delighted by your palate cleanser.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you about donuts.
Just shaking the energy out a little bit.
Shake out the energy of these like pretty, sometimes like heavy stories and choices people make, right?
Right.
So, I mean, maybe this one is, I mean, this might be lighthearted, but with like a heavy story too.
Sure.
So Donut City, it's in Seal Beach, California, 2018, actually same year as the Nike ad.
I'm there.
And it's this donut store that's run by John and Stella, and they're Cambodian refugees. And they've been running this amazing Donut City shop for almost 30 years. And in 2018, Stella actually suffered a brain aneurysm and she couldn't come into the shop. And this Donut City shop was really one of those like key parts of this town, right? That people visited all the time. It was like a staple. That's where people got donuts. And so the town knew that this woman had an aneurysm, and we're like, how do we support not only Donut City, but the owners who have worked so hard and have been a staple in this community? Yeah. So the town got together, and every morning, the entire donut case would be sold out by 8:30 in the morning, because everybody in town would come in, buy all the donuts. And it is because John, her partner, he wanted to spend time with his partner in the hospital. And so the townspeople were like, but he still wanted to obviously not just take charity. He really wanted to contribute to community, sell product. He didn't want to get charity, didn't want to get a GoFundMe. So he would make donuts every night, pop them out, and the town would come and like sell out the shop by 8:30 in the morning so that he could be able to pay his expenses, to be able to still have a living and be able to spend the rest of the day with his wife in the hospital.
That's a very legit Buycott.
Yeah. So,
I love that so much.
And so, because she was in the hospital, then she was going through rehab, and so couldn't work in the shop. But having him there enabled her to just have a better healing journey, not to be on her own while he's working away in the shop. And so within a year, she was back in the shop with John. And it's all because of the community that rallied around to make sure that it wasn't just like a transfer of capital, right? It wasn't just like buying a product, but it was actually buying a product for a real purpose, and making sure that this community staple continued to thrive, and that the people that owned it and ran it also thrived.
I love that so much. Oh, John and Stella.
And it was never like, nobody advertised it. He didn't go online. It was just the community rallying together around doing this. And I think that is part of even the stories of like Nike and GameStop. It's like regular people have so much power to come together and make an impact for people, for community, for the world. I think we often underestimate the power that we have in making impact.
I feel like I've told you this before. Yes, we've talked about my parents owned a general store in a town.
Yes, I know. That's why I was like, you would know this.
My father became very ill and died just after they closed the business. Like they sold it because like they just couldn't. It just didn't make sense anymore. And when he died, like the funeral was so massive. It just felt like everyone from the whole town came, because it was like 3 Main Street East. It was a cultural kind of center. I know it sounds weird as like a little bodega to be that, but it was a beloved place. And the thing about that was 23 years later, when my mother became very ill, and I went home and I was trying to navigate all of these things that were super hard. I didn't know how to do advocacy for my elderly mother who was very ill. The memory of the value and the kind of how it had been a cultural center was still very rich. And everywhere I went, people were like, oh, that's Mary's from PM's from Pat and Mary's. That's Mary. And I was like, this is Mary, my mother. People knew me because I grew up in that store, and everyone helped. I had so many like invisible forces coming in and trying to like help me navigate. It was incredible. So memory. Yeah. Aside, my little personal aside there. That I definitely identify with that story. And people are good. People are good.
And when they come together, they can do amazing things together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that palate cleanser.
Yeah, it's so sweet.
Yeah.
And and so let's get into our last Buycott example. The Patagonia Don't Buy This Jacket.
What buy this episode? Sorry.
The unintentional Buycott.
Okay,
so
let's go.
We all know who Patagonia is. They are the darling of the B Corp community, of the sustainable business community. They've done great things for many people and for the planet. And they, more than anybody else, recognize sometimes the irony of being the best for the planet while also creating product to sell to people. And so in 2011, on Black Friday, which is the biggest shopping day in America, people go wild. We've seen the memes. We've seen the videos of people storming the Nordstroms, the malls, all to fight for the best deal on a TV or a toaster. In 2011, Patagonia took out a full-page ad in the New York Times that said, "Don't buy this jacket." And the ad was, and we'll share this for those of you that haven't seen it, it was a picture of their R2 fleece, their most famous fleece. And below that was really like this receipt of what it took to create this jacket, to manufacture this fleece.
Yeah.
And it was how many emissions were related to the manufacturing of that fleece, how much water was used, how much waste was created. And underneath that, it said, "Don't buy what you don't need." All of this was during a time when Patagonia was trying to push out their Common Threads initiative to really reduce their environmental footprint altogether. And so this was part of that idea of like, how do we actually tell people to consume less? And I'm going to read you a little thing of like why they chose also the New York Times as the place to place their ad. Yeah. We're placing the ad in the Times because it's the most important national newspaper and considered the paper of record. We're running the ad on Black Friday, which launches the retail holiday season. We should be the only retailer in the country asking people to buy less on Black Friday. Which, so you get a bit of the intention of what they're trying to create. They're trying to get people to buy less. So they take out this ad, they publish it. They paid maybe around $57,000 at the time for taking this full page ad out in the New York Times. So the cost of taking that ad space in this national publication. And Casey Sheehan, then the CEO of Patagonia, said that out of that $57,000 ad, they actually got between $40 to $50 million of free publicity because this ad became such a point of discourse, not only amongst people, but in the media. On the biggest shopping holiday, this multinational company took an ad out to say, "Don't buy our stuff today."
Yeah.
Don't buy what you don't need.
And honestly, like, I do believe that this ad, like $57,000, like a $57,000 price tag to become a legend. Like this ad made them a legendary brand. Like this is what people know. They don't remember all the things. They don't know bear ears. They don't know they suit the president. They don't know a lot of these. They don't really know worn wear. They don't really know a lot of these things, but they know don't buy this jacket.
And legendary. The idea, and so this is back to the idea of like what creates these memories around brand that really stick with people. a lot of people will remember this "don't buy this jacket" ad. There's case studies on it. It's studied in school. People remember it.
Yeah.
Every year or two, now that there's like multiple like other campaigns that have emerged out of this on Black Friday, like Green Friday and whatnot, to just really propel people to think differently around shopping.
Yeah. Buy nothing day.
Buy nothing day. Exactly. And so it has had major implications for just the ecosystem of sustainable brands and consumer behavior of like, what does shopping mean to you? What's really interesting, though, and why we call it the unintentional boycott, because obviously the intention of this ad was to get people to buy less. But it became such a big point of discussion in media in those early social media spaces, because remember, this is 2011, so this is early social media days. The brand actually did the opposite. People went out and bought Patagonia because they were like, oh, this brand is amazing. I want that RT2 fleece, which is ironic that people...
I identify.
Did you buy one? You identify with that fleece?
No, because I don't go outdoors. Like I'm not that. I would never be in a Patagonia. No, not really. Like flowers. But not maybe mountains. I don't need to climb the mountains. They're pretty to look at. But I think that, again, this comes back to those kind of characteristics of a buycott, which is identity.
Yeah. Identity, yes.
Like, folks, any person that is like, my God, I have too much stuff. Like, there's too much stuff. There's too much stuff. Where is a way? Where do we throw things? Like, where does all this stuff go? And you see that message, and that is just like a big flashing, like, Vegas cross for you. You're like, I could go there. Like, they believe in what I believe in, and that can make a difference. They're going to make a difference, and I get to, like, if I'm going to wear a billboard, that's the one. Yeah,
absolutely. And so subsequently, like, as they put the ad out, suddenly people are like, I want a fleece too. I want to support this brand that like shares my values. I want to support them. They saw a 30% increase in their revenue, in their sales. Which is huge for a company. They've been around for a while, right? This is a huge boost in their sales. And then subsequently, they continued to grow. And by 2017, so 2018, they had sales of about $417 million. And by 2017, they reached $1 billion in annual sales. So again, like massive increase in retail sales. And again, this ad was really this, like, to your point, it like made Patagonia this iconic brand that really wore its values on the outside. It wasn't just something nice on the website. They actually did what they said that they were going to do and what they believed.
Yeah. I also think that in terms of Patagonia's behavior as a brand, like this becoming such a massive kind of a pivotal moment in the brand, and this like really important external stake in the ground. They claimed their stake. They put their stake in the ground here. They claimed their stake. And now I think a huge part of that brand is always staying true to that. And so
absolutely.
Like, I think this has defined so much behavior, so much of like even what we've seen now with Patagonia, which is like the perpetual purpose trust and all of these things can kind of come back to this like moment where they were like, shit, like we did a thing and now we have to show up for this. Yeah.
We got to show up for this. And I'm going to read a quote from Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia. Every time we've done the right thing, it's ended up making us more money. This is an important statement and reflection because I think it also dispels the idea that if you do the right thing or you do things that are sustainable in nature or that are really centering impact and doing good, that you're just not going to make money. Your concessionary returns, you're just not going to be as valuable, you're not going to grow as fast. And this is, him saying, and also an example of the previous of Nike or even GameStop, that like doing the right thing actually can result in a lot of great positive financial outcomes.
And doing the wrong thing costs you.
It's your money.
Especially if you have said, don't buy this episode. Especially if you're saying that. And then you're not living that. Like, you're not living the don't buy this jacket. I think that is huge. And like, look at the Oatly example that you shared in our last episode, right? It was like
people loved them till they did the wrong thing.
Until they did the wrong thing. People were
I cannot
committed.
look at that. I cannot look at an Oatly container without like now frowning at it at the grocery store.
Yeah. 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 So.
And if you don't know what we're talking, well, like, go listen to our previous episode.
Yeah. Do it. Do it. Yeah.
So lots of great examples of Buycotts and how they play out in the real world. I think these are 3 great examples of just like the different way that they develop and the different players of like who leads that Buycott and how they actually activate the masses.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So
and just that commitment to doing the right thing.
Yes.
You know, they're like, even with Nike, they've been through a lot. Like all the sweatshops in the 80s and the 90s. And then you want to learn more about Nike, read Naomi Klein's No Logo, like oldie and such a classic. And so like, I think a brand like Nike has been trying to find its soul over the years. And we'll see how their story is ongoing. Unlike Patagonia's story, where Chouinard basically gave the company away to the Perpetual Purpose Trust and the Hold Fast Collective and gave $1 billion away.
Yeah. To the planet.
Yeah. To the planet in the hopes that spirit of the don't buy this jacket spirit would remain the North Star of the company. And Earth is our only shareholder. Like we're in business to save our home planet. So
and it's a great example, the Patagonia Trust, that it's like how do you embed purpose into just the structures of doing good over the long run, so that we make sure that we don't have the Everlane scenarios of the world where we're like selling out our values, right? So I think that great example of that.
Yeah. And so I think with these 3 examples, they all met those kind of conditions for a really exciting and impactful Buycott. Like they had these clear targets, these tight windows, like GameStop that January, everything happened in 1 month. We had the unignorable signal fueled by social media of Nike and the sales spike and those folks burning their Nikes, which just enraged people and got them to go out and buy the brand. All 3 of these they were a low cost entry point. And even with Patagonia,
it has to be the most expensive entry point to buy a fleece.
But also zero. Yeah. You, by not buying the jacket,
you're participating.
You're still participating, right? And that's what I think is so brilliant. And then with that identity piece, how many folks, regardless of race, really felt that, really aligned with Kaepernick's vision of like that quote of there are bodies in the street and folks are getting paid leave and they're getting away with murder. And we saw that kind of erupt in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd and this kind of breaking point. Yeah. So amazing. And then those pressure points, they all had really interesting pressure points. So absolutely. I love these. Yeah, I love these Buycotts. Hopefully, hopefully more and more we're going to be able to participate ourselves in Buycotts. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And our callbacks to our boycotts from our last episode. Yeah. Our Montgomery bus boycott, 381 days of withholding, nearly 100% participation on day 1, 300 cars moving people to work, to home, to church, organized at pretty high cost to them, and with this really clear demand and a very clear off ramp. Like, when have we achieved our goal? And so fascinating, that power and the coordination. And these Buycotts are similar, they're just a different direction.
They're just a different direction. And it is the power is in the collective coordination and activation of capital.
Absolutely.
Which we've seen in these examples and many others. And that they do actually create this like long-term memory, the action, and for the brand that it's related to.
And these Buycotts, they had that structure and those pieces that they met the conditions in which to build those brand myths.
Yes.
Because it's
absolutely.
memory, but it
is totally, it is a myth. Yes, absolutely.
It's myth making, and it's these kind of like epochs in a brand's journey.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's really good.
If you're listening, if this week or next week or whenever you're listening to this, maybe think about the next purchase or the purchases that you're making. Can you actually move them to a business that matches your values? And do you actually know what the values of that purchase are to begin with? So do your research, see if they actually match your values and value system that you might have, and tell somebody else about it if you find a brand that you really relate to.
Yeah. Share a story. Build the crowd. As we close out the episode, I want to return to the viral letter from GameStop that was shared in Wall Street and the Wall Street Bets channel on January 28th, the same day Robinhood stopped the trading. And we talked about the 2008, the conditions that kind of created this unrest or this anger or these unresolved kind of feelings or need for justice. And we talked about, and the letter I already shared kind of talked about that wanting to inflict damage on the hedge funds and wanting to inflict damage on Wall Street speculators. But that the writer of that letter also left us with some pretty amazing thoughts on why we would ever boycott and possibility. And so I want to read that to you. Whether you're here for the gains, to stick it to the man as I am, or just to be part of a potentially market-changing movement, thank you. Each and every one of you are the reason that we have this chance. I've never felt this optimistic about the future before. To be part of a rare instance of wealth distribution from the rich to the poor is just incredible. I love you all.
I love that.
Yeah, that gets me. Yeah. So, yeah. That's our episode, Joe.
That's our episode. So if this made you think, good. And if it made you uncomfortable, even better.
Yeah. And we love you all. And that's the episode.
Love you all.